Pleasure to meet all of you virtually, some of you with avatars, some of them just names. My name is Darren Claro. I'm a lead recruiter at Blizzard supporting our game engineering team, our game teams supporting recruiting efforts for engineering, as well as our production side of the house, and that's cross-discipline. I've been at Blizzard about 7 years now. Time flies. Before I know it, it'll be that 8-year mark. And then teams specifically, I support our World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Diablo 4 teams, as well as unannounced projects, so the top secret stuff. Want to also pass it over to my close friend JoJo Rane to chat about what she does over at Blizzard.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. And like Darren said, my name's JoJo. I'm a recruiter here at Blizzard as well, but I'm mostly on the art and animation side of the house. And so I primarily support the World of Warcraft team, the Overwatch team. I do a little bit of work with story and franchise development as well. So those are going to be the folks who work on the awesome Blizzard cinematics. They also do licensed products, comic books, basically all the licensed things that you see pertaining to Blizzard IPs. And then I also have my hand in a couple of those unannounced projects as well that Darren mentioned. But I think Darren's actually going to be pretty much the star of the show here in terms of relevant info for you all. I can, pipe in every once in a while, if you have something related to, art and animation, but mostly I too am here to learn and observe.
Awesome. Thank you, JoJo.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, to kind of give you a quick overview of what we're going to be going over today, let's go ahead and switch on over to the PowerPoint. And hopefully technology doesn't fail us. Hopefully that popped up all right.
I can see it, so hopefully everyone else can.
All right, awesome. Cool. So yeah, this is going to be a game engineering overview. So really it's going to be the anatomy of a game team, roles that we frequently recruit for on the engineering side, kind of walk you through what career pathing looks like, as well as some specializations. So it's easy to think, hey, game programmer, game developer, but there's so many like little specific skill sets that you can kind of hone in further versus being just strictly a generalist. So we'll go touch on a little bit of those, talk about career pathing. So as you graduate from your career programs, looking at, okay, well, where do I start? And, what do I end up wanting to aspire for? Like, do you want to go into more of a managerial type position as you progress through your career? Do you want to go individual contribution and be kind of like the spear tip for initiatives and endeavors? We'll go over that. And then, of course, I want to make sure that I save some time for questions for everybody. And that can be questions around, really the interview process, how to, kind of spruce up your application. It's really going to be free range. There are some topics that we want to keep it focused specifically on, kind of your engineering discipline and kind of getting your foot in the door in the game space. So if we can kind of keep those questions tailored there as you listen along. So yeah, we'll go ahead and hop right to it. So game teams, they're very large organizational structures, at the AAA side. You can take this chart right here and you can actually distill it down for more indie-based games, games that are, just can be, a handful of folks, but you take on bits and pieces of these particular kind of key responsibilities. I wanted to walk you through this first before diving straight into engineering. That way you kind of know the problem space, like who are you going to be working with, who are you going to be collaborating with, and really, kind of where does engineering slot into a greater AAA game team. So we'll take World of Warcraft, for example. It all starts with your executive producer. So they are effectively that vision holder, the one that drives a majority of the decisions and kind of collaborates with the greater studio heads to say, hey, this is kind of when our timelines are, when we want to potentially ship this next expansion, and this is kind of going to be post-launch patches that we're going to be releasing, and kind of working in collaboration with other executive producers on timelines and so forth. How that rolls into the game team is they're primarily the vision holder, and they have a number of lieutenants. So that's your production director, your art director, technical director, and game director. Those are really the primary pillars for which a game is built on, those sub-disciplines. So production director, they manage all of the process. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that go on in the game development lifecycle, and they're responsible for keeping the team on task. So they create those timelines for which the team kind of adheres to, and drive towards a particular release, whether that be a patch, whether that be in a full expansion. so on and so forth. So production director is kind of the lead of all of those producers, and then the lead producers are kind of the discipline leads. So there's producers that focus specifically on, let's say engineering. So engineering producers will actually touch on career pathing, how engineering can go outside of just the engineering space later on. But there are producers that, let's say, came from art, design, engineering, and just have like a raw passion for just kind of keeping things organized, keeping things on task, and blocking and tackling and removing roadblocks for their teammates. So although they're listed in this production director, or excuse me, this producer track, they're working alongside all of the colleagues within art, engineering, and game design. Moving on over to art, that's everything that you see. That's the visual fidelity of the game. So everything from environments to character to dungeon to textures. I mean, it's, you name it. They're the facilitators of the visual medium. And the art director is, as I had mentioned before, the vision holder for art. Like, what is that look and feel that is so iconic to World of Warcraft, that hand-painted texture look? Art managers, they're actually people managers in scope. So they do have an art background, but they're the ones that manage the entire art staff. So they have a very critical role of kind of the mentorship and guiding of the day-to-day. But as far as like where artists slot in, like who determines their responsibilities, that still comes from the art director from the vision standpoint. And then you have lead artists below the art manager, which are working specifically also in those sub-disciplines. So if you're working within, character art, weapons, dungeon, you have kind of a lead that you go to, and they are the ones that break down your tasks and what's in your backlog from sprint to sprint. Now we're getting over to technical side, so engineering, which I'm sure all of you are here for. So technical director, they're head honcho when it comes to the vision holding for engineering as a discipline within a game development team. So they're the ones that help with the architectural decisions, the ones that kind of guide the path of, okay, what are some pieces of technology that we want to implement or streamline to make our engineers' lives easier? That's their job. So making those calls in terms of optimization, process, and best practices. Engineering manager, it's the people manager of engineers. So it is an individual that is a former engineer that has a passion for kind of that growth, management, development of engineers. So they understand kind of the technical scope, but they are less on the implementation side and more on tasking, growth and career and performance management as need be. Underneath that engineering manager, very similar to art and production, you have your lead engineers. So these are your discipline heads. So thinking about the discipline that you want to go to once you complete your degree program is like, okay, well, you have client engineers, you have gameplay engineers, server engineers, graphics engineers, tools engineers. And then there's a lot of different roles in between, like tech artists occasionally fall under engineering, folks that were originally artists, but then now they focus primarily on scripting. Like these are those function heads, and then your engineers kind of roll up into that. We're going to go on ahead and round things out with our game director. So you end up seeing the game director quite a bit in a lot of like discussions about the game. So for World of Warcraft, it's Ian Hazacostas. You see him in a lot of different content videos. He, game director, is effectively the head of design. So the what makes the game fun. And they work alongside all of the other directors to say, hey, you know what, this is kind of the direction that the game's going to go from a lore standpoint, from an adventure standpoint, and then kind of build out that entire roadmap alongside all those folks. So don't want to sound like a broken record, but you also have your design managers that manage a handful of designers, lead designers that focus primarily on each of the main disciplines, and then designers after that. So yes, a very clean chart for an overload of information. Yeah. So the most important question that we're here to answer for you all is, what are we looking for engineering talent? So engineering in the recruiting world, it comes down to three buckets. Are you working client side? Are you working server side? And are you working tool side? So, you hear terms thrown around like, hey, I'm full stack, or hey, I'm front end, I'm back end, I'm, strictly database. Like, this is kind of the easiest way for us to kind of just bucketize, so to speak. So client, you're working primarily on, really kind of what's in front of you. So when you open up the application on your computer or your phone, think like Hearthstone or Overwatch, client engineers are working directly at that layer, which is usually at the engine layer, developing those game experiences that we play through on a day-to-day basis. So they're the ones that are working kind of on that front end side. Server side is really kind of the opposite. So I've had some folks say it's less, glamorous, it's less, visible, but it is still very much important as far as like the day-to-day piece for operating a game team, because server, that's that interconnectivity between the client side, that gameplay experience, and then our infrastructure that connects you to all players of the game. So, that's another bucket where we say, hey, if you're working backend, if you're working database, if you're working, service reliability, you're usually working on the server side. And then tools, they're the facilitators for which make life easier for our engineers. So they build, and most especially here at Blizzard, we have a dedicated tools team for just about every franchise that works on custom tools that line up with our proprietary engines for them to implement and make it easier. So as opposed to doing, manual input of, particular snippets of code or drawing from repositories, it's like they're the ones that make it, hey, if you want to import a specific asset, move it around, animate it, and then, commit it back to our pre-production environment, tools engineers are the ones that do that. As far as technical skills, so very common across AAA games, you're always going to see these three technical skills. I know, of course, there's a lot more just in terms of the number of languages that folks use within game dev, but these are kind of the top three that when asked, I always say, hey, these are going to be the ones that you want to focus on. So C++, you see it from all different types of roles. So that's not just, hey, I want to be a gameplay programmer. All right, you can either do that in C++ in a commercial engine like Unreal, or you can do that in C# in a commercial engine like Unity. So it really depends on the types of games or experiences that you want to create to determine what language you want to over-index on. Long and short, like I see both equally. If you want to work on, something that is more than just a Unity game or something that's, kind of a larger scale experience, usually those are built within C++, and then C# is typically when you see more mobile games. Tooling is very, very, very heavy in C# because it lays on top of the C++ foundation very well, and you can just kind of build those buttons and dials to modify the engine experience. And then Python, which we primarily use on the scripting front, so for building any automation at any level, so both client side or server side, Python is really kind of the go-to, and that's where you see a lot of like segue between technical artists, engineers. Like that's kind of the commonplace language. In addition to the technical side, there's a lot of focus that we start to push now more and more on what's your experience working with other subdisciplines. Like it's very easy to go into a indie project on your own and say, hey, I am one person army. I've done design, I've done engineering, I've done art. I was the one-stop shop. Really what we've seen more is like a migration towards, team, working as a team, whether that be a small, ragtag group of 3 or 4 folks, your capstone project, or much larger teams where, hey, we're just making this for fun. What we want to see is a previous experience working in a team environment, like being able to delegate tasks, being able to, learn more, collaborate for different moving parts as part of a game development project. One question I get asked frequently, almost every time that I do something like this is I get asked, hey, you know what? This job description is saying it needs 2 years of experience. I only have, my education in 6 months. Like, how do I bridge the gap? And the easiest way is going to be side projects. So that is the work that you are doing outside of your education to contribute to your growth as a game development professional. And like, what does that mean? Like, it can be anything from, hey, you know what? I built a map for a particular game. I used the Source SDK or, the StarCraft 2 SDK, and I built something out. That's a start. But going through and saying, hey, you know what? I did several game jams, or hey, you know what, I've done a number of different projects that showcase, hey, I'm doing a lot of research in graphics technology, shader development, particle simulations. That's also a perfect side project. And the add-on question is, do folks want to see completed projects, or do they want to see a number of varying projects, like, hey, I've done this, and I've also done this? It all comes down to what you want to showcase as an engineer. Do you want to get into gameplay? Like, let's see, gameplay, or let's see your gameplay programming work, AI, pathing, 3D math. Those are all very much important when it comes to gameplay. If you want to go graphics, I mean, portfolio is so critical. Like, show us kind of your texture work, show us your, particle simulation, show us, any shaders, and really just show off, hey, this is kind of the area that I want to focus in. And then subsequently, if you want to work more server side, I mean, talk about, let's say you have your own homebrew server, like you have a media sharing server, or you have a little kind of like localized game service for home. We want to know more about that. So I mean, all of those different pieces contribute to the big picture, because we look at those side projects and see experience. It is a very, very, very competitive market right now. I mean, just talent is very abundant, in the emerging talent space. And you have to go through, sometimes some hurdles to differentiate yourself and say, hey, you know what? Not only do I have this awesome degree from University of Hawaii, but I've also done all of these extracurriculars. I've released my own game on Steam, or hey, I'm working on a side project with a couple buddies. Like, it's more is more in this instance. We want to see, again, what you've been doing outside of education and putting that into practice, taking what you learn and then, bringing it into a real contribution. The last thing that I want to kind of talk about, as far as like, what are we looking for in engineering talent, but I want to say specifically, it's all talent. And Jojo, I'd appreciate if you chime in with just kind of your story as well. So the two things that I like to mention is domain and product. So the domain is, why do you want to be, a tools programmer? Like, do you just want to get your foot in the door to work at a AAA company, or do you really have a genuine passion for enabling and empowering other engineers or artists to get their job done better or more efficiently? And you have to have, stories that also back that up. It can't be, have a lack of authenticity saying, hey, I want to be a tools engineer, but in, a year and a half, I'm going to try and jump over to gameplay. Like, there has to be that investment, because in doing so, you learn and acclimate a lot quicker to the problem space. Like, the folks that you're going to be working with, the type of challenges that you're going to be encountering. You're just all around more aware, and it's easier to gel with the team. Secondly is going to be product. Like, there's a ton of amazing companies out there, but one kind of gap that I've seen in some like cover letters is a cut and paste. Like, dear to whom it may concern, I'm very excited to work with your company, not any specific one. I bring this much level of experience. I look forward to hearing back from you at your earliest convenience. Like, those cookie cutter cover letters, like, biggest turnoff for me as a recruiter. Like, I want to see engagement. I want to see genuine excitement. Like, hey, I'm applying for, and it doesn't even have to be like, I know I'm talking about Blizzard, but just in general, hey, I'm applying to Riot Games, or hey, I'm applying to Netflix or Blizzard Entertainment, or Discord, Zoom, whatever it is. Like, there has to be that level of like engagement and excitement, because that pops out to us. The way that I like to think of it is your resume. That's your hard facts. That's what you've done. That's what you've made, what you've achieved, and kind of the recipe. The cover letter, it's the sizzle. Like, why do we want to talk to, to you? Like, what makes you exciting as a candidate? What makes you exciting as a person? Why do we want to work with you, and why would you want to work with us? I think finding that level of chemistry is super important in an application. So yeah, domain and product, don't forget those things. Like, sure, technical and side projects can be there, but if you have really the personality of a cardboard box, like, you're less likely to find yourself in an interview situation, and even more so an offer situation. So that's at least what I see on engineering. Anything you'd like to contribute on the passion side, Jojo, as far as like what you've seen as a recruiter?
Yeah, I mean, I would plus one all of that. I think, in a lot of ways, it's very similar on the art and animation side of it. We want to see a stylistic match. I think a lot of times people try to be a generalist and they try to demonstrate. I don't know how applicable this is to engineering per se, but for art at least, a lot of times people will go in and try to prove, oh, I know how to concept and model and this and texture and, animate and rig and all of this. But we actually prefer it if you show a demonstrated passion in one particular space and you excel at that space and are able to communicate that. And so I think, what Darren was saying, that's kind of universally applicable. And I actually, will second the, having worked at Riot before being at Blizzard, it's the same essentially for all game studios.
Awesome. Thanks, Jojo. Yeah. And again, I think that commonplace between industries, like, if anything, you can walk away from this and say, I already know all this stuff. Totally get it. Sometimes in your courses you get hammered home like, hey, I should be doing this, this, and this. But kind of the big takeaway is that this can be applied to any kind of facet of your job search. So again, want to make sure that we highlight that as well. Moving on over to specialization. So these are kind of the hot roles that we recruit for most frequently within the recruiting world, or the games engineering world. I mean, gameplay engineer, that's really that self-explanatory. I mean, you're the one that's working on the core concept of the game. It's really the one that's most front-facing. It is very popular. Like whenever we open an associate gameplay engineer position on any team, you can expect there's going to be 150 to 200 applications in the first couple weeks. So it is probably the most common. But the thing is again, it comes down to passion. Like some folks just apply for the sake of applying. But if it's a game that you really enjoy, if World of Warcraft is your jam, if Overwatch is your jam, like that shows. And again, like you put yourself at the top of the resume stack, so to speak. AI engineers, a lot of games are migrating more towards that single player experience. Like, sure, there is multiplayer, very much present in your battle royales, your MMORPGs, and shoot, I mean, Among Us, yeah, it's kind of like your shoot, I don't know how to describe it, but just those kind of like community and like type games, but there are that focus on AI. So that's something I've been seeing more and more, is it building out those experiences or that bot behavior that feels more realistic. It's not just, hey, and I'm an NPC and I'm just standing here and then I'll like look around and then like run away. It's focusing really on that organic nature. So it's very heavily on that algorithmic side. So folks that have a lot of experience in data structures, algorithms, 3D math, like those are the folks pathing. Those are the folks that we want to talk to for, AI engineers. Gameplay engineers, I mean, it's dependent upon skill set. So, I mean, if it's for Overwatch, C++ experience is going to be key because that's what our engine's built in. If it's for Hearthstone, then you're looking at C# programming experience in Unity. And that's also working at the engine level. So not just building using kind of the blueprints. Well, that's Unreal, but, kind of like those prefabs, but being able to go in and build your own experience from scratch. Physics engineers, they actually tie very closely with our engine programmers to build out, okay, hey, we blow up this box, what's the math and geometry around that, and how do we make that realistic versus like, hey, it just, explodes into, a puff of dust. Graphics engineers, very, very, very popular now. And these are folks that are building, again, kind of in partnership with your VFX artists, with your actual environment artists. Like they're creating kind of what they want you to see. And then the graphics engineers are really building that out in the engine. So it's very, very heavy C++ programming experience. A lot of work with whether it be DirectX, Vulkan, HLSL, GLSL, those are kind of like the key technologies. And again, or physics-based rendering, that's another kind of emerging technology that we're seeing within the graphics world. Database engineers, you start to see this more on tools related positions. So folks that do have kind of that transactional experience, committing files over to the database, optimizing, how that is all structured and laid out. That way it's easier for engineers and artists to be able to pull from specific repositories. And then last but not least is probably the hardest role to recruit for in engineering, which is server engineering. Because as I had mentioned before, games are a service now. They are always on, always connected to the internet. So in order to connect to other players, we leverage server engineers that work alongside our BattleNet team for two primary reasons. Like one is infrastructure server engineers. So that's the folks that build out the hardware, whether we're doing it from, traditional hardware, but or if we're leveraging, cloud-based technologies such as AWS or Google Cloud Compute, expertise in that domain, or you could be a features server engineer. So that's more along the lines of like matchmaking. So when you realize that you're getting matched up in a bad meta in Hearthstone, or if the team that you're playing against in Overwatch is overpowered, you can blame those server engineers for, their matchmaking code. They're the ones that you should, be shaking your fist at. But again, it is a very important skill set. It's a pillar to a game team. So if I was going to give advice and say, hey, you know what, this is the role that you should probably build towards in the future, I'm going to say server engineering. There will never be a shortage of work. And, it's a space where we're continuously investing in as an industry. Because again, games as a service is here to stay. Free to play games, games that are, very similar in scope to like MMOs. I mean, they're always going to be commonplace. So there's always going to be a need for server engineers. And I mean, even games that you're playing, like, your mobile games today, like, hey, I'm making a move, and then it, sends that push over to your opponent. That's still a server engineer doing that work. So yeah, highly encourage you guys. But yeah, if you want to go do gameplay, go for gameplay. Just don't forget those side projects and showcasing that you bring more to the table.
I just want to interject very quickly to tell the students that network engineering, the server side stuff, is an area in which UH has a particular strength. So we have great faculty here. So it's an area not only that we have that, but that you would get a particularly strong education in. Sorry about that.
Oh,
nope,
no worries.
all good. Server engineers worth their weight in gold. I don't even work in that discipline, and I know that we hire them like crazy. So
Oh yeah,
gonna put that out there.
I mean, you can go on any company's career page right now. I mean, Blizzard, I know we have at least five or six server engineer positions open across a variety of projects. But go on to any other game site or game company and look, server engineers, they are highly sought after, highly desired. I should have put it at the top of the list for specializations, but most people, when they think game development, they think gameplay. So, but yeah, these are kind of the emerging and popular roles that I've been seeing more and more. Alongside, there's still you have your UI engineers, you still have tools engineers, you still have client engineers, engine programmers. Like those are still very much needed roles across the industry. It's just that these are ones that I've noticed kind of especially more prominent than others in the recruiting space.
I had a very quick question while we're on the specialization slide.
Yeah.
So I know that Blizzard has started experimenting with data science and stuff like that, and it's an area in which the University of Hawaii has started heavily investing in. Is there any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so data science as a discipline, it is also very integral, I guess, to kind of not like the development of the game, but like the sustainability of a game and a franchise. So we have data scientists that work specifically on player experience. So I want to say one of the biggest achievements we've hit. So in Overwatch, if you're playing the game, after the match, you can say, hey, I want to endorse my buddies. Like that was an implementation from our data science team saying, hey, you know what? Players are more likely to positively respond and, be engaging, based on this type of behavior. So they were the ones that did that research, made that recommendation. So things of that nature. And then also looking at like longevity of a player, like, okay, let's look at the data here and understand like, where did someone end up churning? Where did someone end up, re-picking back up content? Like, why is someone coming back to play Shadowlands today? Like they are the scientists and really the mathematicians that determine all of that and provide the recommendations to our game teams to make real. So very much a part of the game development kind of like overarching structure, but in terms of like, hey, do they actually develop the game itself from an auxiliary perspective, but still very much part of kind of the game development ecosystem. All right. So next slide right here is the engineering career path. So I'm going to talk through each of these different kind of tags right here. So associate software engineer, that's typically where you start out once you graduate from college. That's someone that has, limited industry experience. Again, they have those side projects, they have the foundations in development, but when it comes to like actual hands-on implementation or working enterprise-wide alongside a team, usually that's a little bit lighter. Like internships, awesome. Those are huge in terms of kind of getting that exposure early. So, I mean, by all means, during your freshman, sophomore, junior years, seek those out because those are great learning opportunities to get domain knowledge on what it takes to be a programmer, whether it be in games, outside of games. Like that's better than, hey, I'm hanging out with my buddies for the summer. So, yeah. But that's associate level. Mid-level is when you start to, you're starting to get your bearings. So this is someone that's about like anywhere between 3 to 5 years of experience in the space, well, 2 to 5. And that's someone that has, the industry experience. They have a mastery of their primary language. So if they're a gameplay programmer for World of Warcraft, usually it's C++. They're able to kind of go in, debug their own code, go through the exercise of code reviews, and understand just kind of best coding practices from a day-to-day standpoint. Next would be senior 1, senior 2. So that's a senior software engineer, both level 1 and level 2. I kind of put them next to, or on the same kind of tag, because branching it out even more just ended up ruining my PowerPoint by itself. So what seniors are is they have that extensive level of industry experience. They've been in the space anywhere between 6 to 8.5 years. I mean, it varies because certain organizations use different monikers, but they are implementing systems and being the architects of a particular subsystem. So let's say a designer says, hey, I want to implement Loot Goblin in Diablo. This person is going to be able to take that, understand, go through the exercise of determining the requirements with our designers, kind of build the prototypes, work through the actual implementation, and then iterate per sprint, on items that are listed on that backlog. So they are a leader in their role, someone that takes on individuals for mentorship. They're the ones that kind of conduct code reviews. Senior 2s, they're the second level of that. So again, they are true owners of the features that they build out. On occasion, they have folks that do report up into them. So this is kind of the good segue. Like, as a senior software engineer, you have a decision that you'd like to make, whether you'd like to move into people management or you'd like to move into individual contribution. So individual contribution track is typically what we call the principal track. So you are just the go-to, the spear tip for any initiatives as it relates to your particular discipline. So if you are the principal gameplay engineer, anything that comes across for systems implementation, systems design, architecture, you are the go-to for that particular feature. A lead software engineer, although they are still a spear tip in their own right, they're moving on the track for management. So this is someone that wants to continue to be a leader in their discipline, but also, hey, I want to be the one conducting code reviews. I want to be the one to conduct performance management, but also still kind of lean in for critical decisions alongside the technical director. In managing kind of the workload of the team and the direction of that the team's going. Principal engineer both has a level 1 and 2. You can think of the 2 as just a little bit stronger level of experience, and then it goes into fellow. So to my knowledge, I think there's only a couple at Blizzard that are at the fellow level. You see this terminology very common across software engineering, like, hey, I'm an engineering fellow, I'm, principal 3, like senior principal, like they all kind of fall into that bucket. Lead software engineers, that's when you start going that technical director track. So if you remember back at the very beginning of the presentation, when we were talking about the anatomy of the game team, technical directors, they are the vision holders. So you fully have you have a full grasp of what the internal architecture of the game is like, and you are the one that guides the direction to, hey, what, game design is telling me we want to build this, art is looking for these types of features within the engine, and then production is saying, hey, here's how we get it all, the time frame for when we need to get it all done. So you are operating at that decision making level. So quickest way to think about it is just growing responsibilities and scope from associate engineer all the way up to technical director. So the tasks and kind of experience you glean as a senior engineer, you'll still lean on those as a lead, and then subsequently as a TD, you'll still lean on those experience from when you were a lead software engineer. One thing that I had forgotten to put on this career pathing slide is that you can pivot out of traditional engineering. And what I mean with that is I've seen folks that were technical directors go into production as a production director. So they were leveraging kind of the orchestration piece that they had, managing a full staff of lead engineers, kind of the delivery pipeline. Those skills translate. It varies from team to team because, of course, you still need to have the foundations of being a producer, but they're still translatable kind of pieces from your role, from one role to another. So another kind of example I can provide is, okay, say you were a software engineer, but your true passion is in art and creative design. We have a number of folks that have gone, the technical art direction. So you're still hands-on keyboard, but you're building out the tools and the pipeline that help support artists. And then, for certain teams, they are also doing content creation and art as well. So if that's something that you want to kind of, hey, I'm an engineer, but I can't, I find myself more engaged in doing like content creation, then absolutely, that's an avenue. So it's all just a matter of finding out as you go through your career, like, hey, where's my passion? Like, what domain do I really want to be in? And sometimes it changes. Like for me, I got into recruiting. interesting. I started out my education as a software engineer, but I realized I absolutely sucked at math and algorithms. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of putting myself through this, I'm going to go on ahead and pivot over to marketing. So, and then I eventually leveraged that into technical recruiting and working with engineers. So I got to leverage a little bit of both worlds. So not saying it's as easy as that, but it's still, something that we encourage is that, if engineering, you want to do more outside of just what's here, you can do it at a place like Blizzard. All right, that was a lot of information, a lot of talking, and the last slide, I believe, is the question slide. So looking at time, we're at 6:38. Want to make sure that I open the floor to everyone here for questions about the recruiting process, languages, things that might not be clear. Yeah.
When they say 6:38, that's because they're in California. Don't freak out. We're still 3:38 for us here.
Yep. We
Oops, sorry. Yes.
we time traveled for this one. 3:38. That's correct. Sorry about
No,
that.
no worries, no worries. So if you have any questions, now is the time. I mentioned earlier, you can put them into the chat. You can even unmute if you'd prefer to just verbally ask a question. Whatever you are more comfortable with, just ask away.
Hey, I got a question. I was wondering, as far as like game development and game design goes, what's the common path to get into that? Like I heard being a QA tester is usually one of the paths that you can take. Or what is some other tracks that you normally see going into that position?
So like going to become a game designer?
Yes.
I've seen it go from the QA track because you're super embedded just in kind of the iteration process of game development, understanding, what goes into a GDD or what goes into a specific feature. And then QA, of course, is the one that tests against those requirements that are established by design. So hitting the nail on the head, that's where I see a lot of it. Gameplay programming as well. So you're working with designers, so you're getting that exposure there and understanding like, hey, you know what are the particular pieces or kind of requirements in design that engineering fulfills, and you're kind of like reverse engineering that. So I've seen folks go from the engineering track to design and then subsequently design track to engineering. So QA and gameplay engineering track, those are going to be kind of immediate translatable skill sets to design.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. I see we have a couple questions from the chat. So how do game jams look to you recruiters? I think they're awesome. I think it's kind of given where we're at in kind of a distanced collaboration setting, those are important because you're still working together towards a common goal, whether the game is released or you're just working on a particular feature. Having a game jam on your resume is going to stand out more so than not doing the game jam. And then whether it ends up being a finished product or not, like it's still important to showcase and show that you did it. You went through the exercise of partnering with, a number of other folks to work towards a common goal and, kind of showcase where you ended up. Let's see. Next question. You mentioned that Blizzard was looking for software engineers that build tools. What does that entail? And what does tools for the art department look like? That's a great question. So software engineers that focus on tools specifically, I mean, they are the folks that work with the fellow engineers to determine like, hey, you know what? I'm working at the engine level. What can I modify for you to make your job easier? So whether it be the import or export of assets, this can be, character generation. This can be kind of a quick prototype or mock-up. Like, let's say someone uploads something to or wants to upload something to pre-production, that can take a long time to compile because you're packaging an entire game experience. Whereas there's tools engineers that build out, kind of like small sandbox environments so you can import an asset, see what that looks like, or hey, is it going to maneuver or behave in the way that I'm looking for? And then that's kind of the tools engineer's role is to build those solutions. Tools for art department, I mean, it's primarily import export. Or kind of modeling and rigging tools. So though most of their work is done in Maya and 3ds Max with PyQt and is it MaxScript? And then also Python as well. So number of different,
Mel.
Yeah, Python and MelScript.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for art tools, that's what we're looking like. Less traditional computer science background. Like it's nice if you can read C++, but we're not asking you to implement hands-on keyboard. So I mean, most of your work's going to be in in Python. All right, next global game jam, cool. Projects with teams that are important. Is it important to have a team with other engineers working in different disciplines, or is it better to work with artists and content? Ed, you answered your own question beautifully. Both is best, because what's important is the ability to partner with both technical and non-technical folks, being able to say, hey, you know what, other engineer, these are the technical requirements and specifications. Artist or content creator, this is kind of what we're going to be implementing and putting into, you know, kind of the game, and this is how you can use it. So being able to work to speak both languages goes a long way, because certainly there is differences in the way that engineers and content creators approach things. So being able to kind of bridge that gap seamlessly goes a long way. What can we do to get noticed by Blizzard, AKA how do we show passion, the passion I was talking about? You know, number one thing I always say is going to be that cover letter, because as a recruiter, we always look at it. Like we always look to see if there's, you know, yes, you've included your resume, but did you also include your cover letter? It's very strange to me that in today's day and age, cover letters are becoming less and less prevalent. So it bums me out. But the ones that do have cover letters, I'm like, oh, I'm going to click into this. Like, what makes them them? Like, why are they applying to this role? And sometimes I get treated to, you know, the surprise of, hey, dear Crystal Dynamics recruiter. And I'm like, well, we're at Blizzard. So, you know, also shows us attention to detail, if anything. So always include a cover letter. And I don't want to speak on, you know, JoJo's behalf, but I feel like it's something that is agreed upon by all disciplines, is we want to see that. And that's an easy way to showcase like what you're all about. Why are you applying? Why are you interested in the role? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just as an addendum to that, you know, it's like in the game industry, I feel like we're a lot less formal and a lot more casual, and we really encourage kind of flying your geek flag high, right? And so I love fan art. Some of the best artists that I've found, like the easiest way to demonstrate that passion is they go and they make their own Overwatch skin or concept or something like that, you know? They build their own, you know, WoW environment, scene that they would love to see in game, and they tell us their personal stories in the cover letter. And that's one of the things that I personally enjoy the most about being a recruiter, is being able to share that. And it's immediately a sense of kind of kinship and commonality, right? It's like, yes, I remember having to like kill 10,000, you know, whatever to, you know, you know, basically in World of Warcraft, you know, to get that pet or to get that mount or whatnot, you know? So just, you know, I think you can show a little bit more of your personality and, you know, what brought you to Blizzard in the first place, or what inspired you to, you know, to play those games.
Yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid to geek out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I had to say, don't go
Yeah.
all, you know, full send one way and, you know, writing your entire cover letter in like Orcish or Elvish. Like you can, you know, hit us with a Loktar Ogar, totally cool. But if you're going like full, I mean, where I need a codex or some sort of like a transcription service, then yeah. But yeah, don't be afraid. Share your passions. Like even if you did play World of Warcraft way back when, or even if you did, you know, kind of lapse from Overwatch, we still want to hear those types of stories. Like, hey, you know what? I grew up playing Blizzard games, or I grew up with these types of, you know, Blizzard experiences, whether it be Lost Vikings or War 3 or, you know, StarCraft 1, Brood War. We want to know that history because it makes it more real. All right, let's see. What is the environment like at Blizzard? Are there many programmers that are women like myself? Yes, there are a number of women engineers. We do actually have a, what do we call it? It's not we have like a group, like do you understand? You know what I'm talking about, Jojo?
Our
It's like the,
diversity and inclusion.
thank you. Yes,
Yes.
those
Mm-hmm.
those focus groups. So we have like a women in engineering that actually, or women in games that meet up. Shoot, it was once a year. So I mean, they have their own kind of offsite to talk about, hey, you know, what's it like to be an engineer, a female engineer at Blizzard? What's it like to be, you know, a female designer, and just work, share stories, and build bonds. And we also have lean-in circles as well to just say, hey, you know, and how can I best tackle these challenges? And yeah, diversity and inclusion is huge endeavor for Blizzard, because we want to make sure that everyone feels represented. Everyone feels like they have a voice. That's one of the values, core values at Blizzard, is every voice matters. So we want to make sure that we have those avenues for, whether it be women engineers, folks that come from diverse groups, like that there's the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I mean, in the same spirit of that, we actually have a women's summit every year.
Yeah.
This
Women's
year it
Summit.
was virtual, but it's an entire day of, we have guest speakers who come in and we talk about leadership and we talk about some of the unique challenges that women face sometimes being underrepresented in this particular industry, and kind of the steps that we're taking, as a company and more generally speaking, to kind of make everyone feel welcome and to make everyone feel, so like, everyone of every gender and every persuasion is welcome to attend this summit. But yeah, I mean, I think that we actually have a lot of measures in place that are very welcoming from a diversity perspective.
Right on. Thanks, Jojo. All right. Scrolling up. Let's see. What are tips for a successful interview, and what can we prepare to impress the recruiters? Stories. I think that's important, is talking about, what specifically did you work on in any which project. Like if you say, hey, yeah, I was a part of this team that developed this, side scroller 2D shoot 'em up game. That's like, it's good information, but I want to know specifically more, like, what were you hands-on keyboard for? What was the specific implementation? How hands-on were you in those design discussion meetings? Like, were you a part of, hey, wouldn't this be cool if we built this out? Like, were you an active participant, or were the designers just saying, hey, here's what we think we want to build out, can you just code that in Unity, and let's see what it looks like as a prototype? So being able to speak through what you actually did in those specific examples go a long way, because
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to look at a resume and you just throw all these different technologies, like, yeah, I'm C, C++, Python, Java, cloud technologies, Jira. Like, that laundry list is good, and it's great for, just those specific, like, focus terms and like buzzwords, but we want to know, what specifically did you do in Java? What specifically did you implement in C#? And then how did that kind of impact the greater project? So being able to provide meaningful examples and speak through, additional detail on your resume, that's what's going to make a good interview, is being able to walk us through and make that, show us from soup to nuts, what were you a part of? Let's see. What's more important for projects, uniqueness of concept or quality of implementation? That is a tough question. It does depend on the type of role that you're trying to go for. Like, if you are looking for specifically like UI, then we want to see unique concepts. Like, hey, what if the UI did this for Hearthstone, or what if you could look up this particular information on the fly? Whereas something that's, like, let's say, more scalable in nature, like if you're a server programmer or a network engineer, like, we want to see the quality of code. We want to see your GitHub. We want to see the types of projects, types of commits. If you're contributing to any open source projects, those are also important to include as well. Like, we want to see really kind of, again, that hands-on keyboard expertise. So it's a little bit of both. Like, it's I don't have like a catch-all answer. Like, unique concepts, awesome, but I think if it's an incomplete unique concept, like, we'd rather have something that is tried and true but completed, versus something super unique but it's just bits and pieces of it. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, we'll take the silence as a yes. All right. Can we add you on LinkedIn if we have more questions? Yes, go on ahead. You can always look up Darren
Absolutely.
Claro or Jojo Rane.
Yes, please.
Let's see. More Reinhardt stuff. If we are focused on more, or if we are more focused on engineering management, what do we need to do to prepare? I mean, experiences, I mean, the foundations of development have to be there. You can't be someone non-technical and say, hey, I want to manage engineers, because when they start diving into the specific challenges that they're looking to solve, the engineering manager has to be there to kind of take down those roadblocks. Like, production helps with that, but also engineering managers, where they go to the specific leads and say, hey, you know what, I'm getting a little pushback on a blocker for, this particular engine feature that we're looking to implement. Is there another way that we can potentially, either push it back or break it down into a different task? So foundations have to be there first, and then as you kind of move through, I want to see, like, the divergence point is usually when you're like a senior 2 to lead software engineer. That's when you can you have enough, background and experience to make that move into engineering management, at least in AAA, because you've worked with teams at scale. You're working with teams of anywhere between 35 to 40 folks on any particular implementation. So that's not just engineers on your team proper, but that's also, kind of the concentric circles, like your engineers, your designers, your QA, and then other stakeholders and partners. So yeah, usually at that level. But yeah, focus on the foundations first. Focus on, getting your degree, practical work experience, side projects, kind of taking on those meatier tasks, and then, being a part of, breaking that into bite-sized pieces, and then eventually building on the managerial expertise. Because as you kind of climb the ladder as an engineer, those opportunities tend to crop up. So lead engineers, they ask you to do a lot. And of course, there's partnership with our junior members that you could be mentoring, opportunity for management, and then you start to build that muscle fiber around moving into that engineering management track. Let's see. Scrolling down. Is Blizzard interested in developing VR products in the future? I don't have any insight to that. I'm just working on the teams that I do, so I can't really speak to that. Any thoughts on Genshin Impact? I think it's an awesome game. The Venti banner wrapped up yesterday, so I'm bummed I only got one copy. What else?
I will tell Renault. I think he'll appreciate that. He works very hard. He works very hard at those gains. I'm working with him right now in a character artist role, and yeah, he wears like those tank tops, and yeah, so.
All right. Is it risky to go too niche? If you know what you want to do, pursue it. Because there are roles that look for that highly specialized. But, for folks that are looking to kind of break into the industry first, it's good to have a breadth of knowledge, because then you can start to build, hey, you know what, I originally wanted to be a gameplay engineer, but now that I'm working with this team, now I want to be more of a tools engineer. But if you're wholeheartedly set on going into AI for procedural generation, or, graphics or server, follow that, because that's the domain that you're the most passionate about. You're going to be able to speak and be, present your most authentic self when it comes to, cover letters and things like that. So don't hold yourself back. But at the same time, it's like a lot of opportunities at the associate level are more generalist in nature, folks that can cover a broad scope. And then eventually, as you continue your career, you start to specialize more and find out what specifically the domain you want to work in. So it's up to you. It's tough for me to say like one way or another, but if you really, really, really do have a passion for AI, keep learning, keep growing on in that space, because yeah, we do look for that type of talent. More serious question. Has Blizzard implemented more asset pipeline automation tools for scale with applications like Houdini or in-house tools? Yes, we do have our tech art team build out our pipeline, our asset and pipeline from scratch. So they've built that out in-house. So and that is automated through Python. When recruiting, do you focus more on the amount of programming language, knowledge, experience, projects? The interview. Hold on, I got to reread this one. It is a balance of all. Looking at it, I mean, if someone comes across as, has a growth mindset, they are eager to learn, they come with a, decent amount of experience, like all of those come together when we write up our notes to a hiring manager. So typically the recruiting process is you apply for a job, recruiter screens your application or resume. They make the determination if they'd like to move forward with kind of that initial recruiter screen. And from there, that's when we go through and talk about, kind of your current role, why are you looking, why is this role of interest to you? We also talk about kind of what we're looking for in the role itself, why the position's open, things of that nature. And all of those, we're taking diligent notes. That way we can share that experience with the hiring manager and say, hey, here's a resume and cover letter for Catherine. In my call, it went really well. We really hit it off talking about World of Warcraft. They're really eager to work in this type of space. They find that kind of long-term career growth, they want to be a gameplay engineer. I feel like it's going to be really worth a follow-up discussion. So we make those recommendations, and all of those kind of tie in to how we present you to the hiring team. So it's healthy balance. All right, I'm trying to power through as many questions as I can in these last 3 minutes. Are there any positions in information security, either as an analyst or in engineering? Yes, we do. We do have a dedicated security team at Blizzard. They actually are a part of our BattleNet and online products team. So they focus on all of the anti-hack, anti-cheat side of the house, within games. So anything that you see, someone's hacking an Overwatch, has an aimbot, you report them. That ends up getting run through our security team, and they have the tools to be able to kind of action on that. Any other roles for IT? Not quite sure where they're at in terms of headcount for the end of the year, but I know that always continue to keep your eye on the job board, because each recruiter, each team kind of continuously, if there's a new role that opens, I mean, it's going to hit the job board first before it's like, hey, Darren, you're a game recruiter, but do you know anyone in IT security or IT? So that's my advice there. Are there any, so let's skip those two. Are there any examples of cover letters and resumes that I can share? Unfortunately, not with me. I mean, I'd have to scrub all that for the privacy and kind of information that is on those resumes. I do know that colleagues of JoJo and I are going to be in touch with University of Hawaii, to kind of talk through like what's next. How can our university relations and early careers team partner with you guys to get you set up in that space? So more to come there. Does it help to have experience with version control? Absolutely. And then collaboration tools. Jira is what we use for most project and feature management at Blizzard. Since positions for game artists are highly competitive. Oh, okay. Jojo, that's a question for you from Sunny Kim. It's about...
Sorry, I'm trying to get caught. I'm scrolling through the chat. Sorry. So style. Every time I do a presentation at a university, I think it's a lot more cut and dried than a lot of people expect on the art side. The art directors and hiring managers can't read your mind and know what you're capable of. You have to demonstrate that you actually understand the components of that particular unique game style and be able to hit it, showcase that. So, if you have a hyper realistic portfolio and you're applying for a World of Warcraft position or an Overwatch position, that hiring manager is not going to be able to go, well, I think Sunny can do, stylized, kind of like the push proportions. You have to actually show us. And so I think having concrete examples that demonstrate, again, that what the building blocks of, like what that makes that particular game style unique to that game are what we look for.
All right, and then what is it? The last question before the cutoff is there a set of tooling that Blizzard uses that would be good to get experience on?
Like you said Jira, and that's not like, it's not like but thinking like Git, Perforce,
Yeah.
Stuff that might be out there that is like, hey, you already know how to work with our stack, so you'll be able to get productive faster or something like that.
Yeah, most version control, like we're pretty agnostic. Like Git is what we utilize primarily across Blizzard. So if you have experience working, with that particular collaboration tool, very helpful. If you're working within automation, if you find yourself, hey, I'm really passionate about automation in, streamlining process, Jenkins is huge. I think that's, not only just setting up Jenkins jobs, but entire, kind of automation pipelines. That's something that I'm starting to see more and more openings kind of crop up for across all of our different game teams. So if you want to pursue in that space, it's doesn't hurt to have it as part of your toolkit. Yeah, I think that's it. We made it to, what is it, 4 o'clock for you guys now?
Yes, it is roughly exactly 4 o'clock. So yeah, I had to unfortunately cut off the questions because we were starting to get over, and everybody has a lot of questions. So I did mention if you have any more questions, you can send them to me. I have my info. I can repost my info in a second. Discords when they are up. There we go. Also, I'm recording this, so I will have this posted somewhere so we can all see it. That'll be up later this week. I can't get it up today. I'm too busy, but yeah. So when that's up, I'll post it, and you guys can take a look. So I'm going to abuse my club presidential powers to get one more question in. Let's see. Hopefully this copy and pastes well. That's going to be a little ugly. So this is what I copy and pasted to the chat is the list of requirements for one of the internship positions that they have posted. I think this is specifically the data science one. So I guess could you guys just briefly, for all of us real quick here, could you go through like, because I've heard various things from people, like sometimes they say like these are the qualifications we're looking for, but people will say like, oh, you don't need to exactly hit these check marks. Like sometimes if you have like 1 or 2, but you don't have like all 3, it's okay. Then you have the recommendations. Like how important are actually those the recommended section? Could you perhaps like elaborate on that?
Yeah, recommended is definitely helpful. Like it's effectively what we'd say is our pluses, because this is kind of going to be what greases the wheels, like in terms of how quickly can you ramp up and be able to do the work. Like most especially for an internship, you having that foundational level of experience, like the level requirements, huge, because that's going to be kind of the bread and butter of what you're doing. But as opposed to spending a majority of time kind of ramping up, understanding the domain, problem space, the tools that we use. If you have those recommended, those pluses, it just makes it easier, and then you can move to, kind of more meaningful tasking as part of your internship. So I'm not saying they are truly, truly nice to haves. But of course, if you have more of them than not, then it makes you a more suitable candidate, a closer fit for what the team's looking for during that internship duration. Because internships at Blizzard, they are true experiences. We're not having you just come in and just sit and learn. Like you're going to be working on tasks that are going to be in support of, for example, the data science team. Or like if we hire a tools program or tools intern for Diablo 4, you are working on the Diablo 4 editor building those tools. So it's we want to make sure that you have significant tasks and takeaways. That way when you complete your internship, you can say, hey, as you write your resume, this is exactly what I did. I built out this particular dashboard as a data scientist. I utilized these languages, and then it kind of just brings it all together at the end of your internship.
All right, thank you guys so much. If you're curious, a lot of you guys were asking like, well, what are some first steps? They're offering internships for students like us. This is the link that I found them at. I don't know if this is necessarily the right link, but this is the link where they are available. I had to filter for the internships, so you can find them there. So yeah, that's one way to get into it, and then of course all the other stuff that they suggested. So thank you so much to JoJo and Darren again for coming to virtually visiting the university and giving this presentation. It means a lot to us out here.
Yeah, anytime. It was a pleasure. Really appreciate you guys hosting us. One last thing, internships, yes, very much a good way. We do have roles that are listed as new grads on our careers page. So if you find yourself in that weird kind of time frame between, hey, I'm graduating and I'm not eligible for an internship, we do have roles that are specifically focused on recent grads, and you're not competing with the talent market of folks that have been in the space, a couple years or have held, worked in the industry a couple years. So just be sure to check those out as well. Those are denoted on our careers page as new grad. So yeah, if you're not eligible for internships, don't fret. We also have those roles as well. But yeah, thanks for having us. JoJo, anything you want to close out on?
No, just absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to meet all of you. Appreciate you taking the time out of all of your busy schedules to, ask us questions and listen in, and hope to see all of your applications.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Take care and have a good afternoon.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Have a good one. Thanks again
Thank you,
for
guys.
having us.
Yep. We'll be back next week
Bye.
for the club meeting, same time. I'll be back on Discord. So yeah, otherwise, see you guys.